Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Monday. Well, it's my Monday. For many of you, it's still your Sunday. Happy Mother's Day to all of those mums amongst us. And we had a great day yesterday. We were able to celebrate Jodie, my wife, who is the mother of my 3 gorgeous children. My son was away on a music camp, which meant he had to give his gift a little bit later in the day, but nonetheless it was good to get him home and for Jodie to be celebrated in only the manner that she deserves. And I hope, if you're a mum, I hope you were celebrated in the manner that you deserve. Today we are going to be talking voice registration. We've already got all of our faves, our regulars jumping in. We've got Linda from Tassie and Karen from Singwise Vocals. Karen, it was so good to spend the morning with you having a chat. But I am surprised that you've been able to stay up this late, because you're from the US, of course, and for those of you of our people who don't know you, so you must be tired. But nonetheless, Gavin is with us as well, and Gavin's already put a question up on the chat section there, and that's because Gavin knows that we will also, after we've talked about voice registration later in the show, if we have time, we are going to answer your questions. Generally not all of them, because generally there's too many to answer in one sitting, but nonetheless we certainly try to answer at least a couple of questions at the end of our live hangouts together. And we do these live hangouts every Monday or Tuesday, and they're scattered throughout the day because I'm fitting them in amongst all of my schedule. So right now I should be seeing one of my students who had to fly to Sydney. He's a hairdresser, so he had to fly to Sydney and do a whole heap of stuff. So that gives us an opportunity to spend some time together. And the way for you to make sure you're always notified about when I'm going live is to make sure, firstly, you've got to subscribe to the channel, and secondly, you've got to hit that bell icon so that YouTube will let you know when I'm going live. Because as I said, it's either Monday or Tuesday. It's never the same day, never the same time twice in a row, typically from week to week. And then, of course, we always have our pre-record, more in-depth, detailed videos that go live on a Thursday. That all aside, today what we're going to do is we're going to be discussing voice registration. Is there a more hotly debated, controversial subject in singing? Maybe not. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as the afternoon for me gets underway. And I'm going to just talk you through how I approach it. And it's important that we own and ground it. But for now, let me just pop over to here and let's get the show on the road.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
And so, voice registration. Controversial subject, and it's really important that I make it very clear. And I really want to own and ground my own pedagogy. We've spoken many times here. I am not a vocal methodologist guru, and so I don't want to set myself up as one. And the topic that we're going to be looking at today, as I said, there are a range of views on this, and where I can, I'll touch on the different views. But I am going to share with you how I approach it and how I've approached it in my studio for the past 15 years. But to do so, I do need to take us across to the whiteboard, because we are going to get kind of all whiteboardy today. So just give me a moment. Now, if you're jumping onto the chat section, make sure you say good day. Make sure you tell us where you're from. A number of people already in the chat are regulars here, and I know that they're, if you're new to Voice Essentials, then I know that everyone in the chat section who normally hangs out here as a part of the live chats will be really supportive to you. So make sure you tell us where you're from. Let us know, what is the weather like in your part of the world today. I actually normally I have a camera set up outside so I can give you a look at what Brisbane, Australia's weather is like today. It's actually a little bit warmer. We had this massive fog start with us today, but it's lifted and it's really produced this gorgeous late autumn day, and it's sitting at around about, I reckon it must be around about 28 degrees. So for this time of the year, quite balmy. Okay, so let's talk registration. Whenever I come to talking about registration with my private clients, I remember one person actually said that they came to the lesson, because I'll often say, hey, next week we're going to be talking about voice registration. And one student actually did confess that she came really concerned that she was going to be made to sign up for something. We're not registering for anything. What we're talking about is those aspects, that the way of thinking about your voice mechanically. Now, most of us have talked about voice registration, often without knowing about it. And the way we've talked about voice registration is we've talked about it as chest and head. Now, some of you who have watched my channel in detail have already seen this in part. I'm going to add something today. I've never done it like this before in its totality. I'm adding a fifth step. Many of you have seen me talk about voice registration as a four register model. And I'm still going to be talking about that today. I'm going to add something to it today, so I hope you'll stick around because I think it completes the picture. And the model that I am using today, and it has to be said is my interpretation of the model, is a model that was released back in 2000 by two gentlemen, Graham Welch and Leon Thurman. Leon Thurman is a highly regarded singing teacher in the US, and Graham Welch is a highly respected voice researcher in the UK. And they released a book called Body, Mind and Voice. It is, for me, it's still a go-to text on so many subjects. And it is from that text, Body, Mind and Voice, that I take my model of voice registration from. Now, there are many models when it comes to voice registration. Joe Estelle really talked about one in thick and thin fold. We're going to talk about chest and head in a moment. There's a recent one to come out of France when we talk about M1 and M2. And I will disclaim that I haven't, whilst I'm aware of it and whilst I have heard people talk about it, I have not delved deeply into that new release, which is, I think it came out around about 2007, 2009. This new way, which seems to be the flavour of the month, but that doesn't mean it won't have legs. It doesn't mean it won't go on to be a really helpful way of looking at voice. But today what I want to do is show you how I talk to my clients about voice, the mechanical undertakings of the voice, and how I think of my own voice. And I have found this so helpful in being able to construct my ideas around contemporary pedagogy, that I hope you will also find it helpful. And make sure that if I say something that really resonates with you, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, and also interact with each other on the in the chat section. I will get back to looking at the chat, but as you can see, I'm away from the computer at the moment, so I can't interact with you there or see what's going on. So let me talk you through this, and then we'll interact on the chat section a little bit later. So as I said, this is what most people think of when they think of their voice. They think of chest and they think of head. And that is helpful. It's helpful for beginner students. But it is, I always found up until the early 2000s, this model really confused me, because if I'm singing in my chest, ya, we understand that's a chest note. And if I'm singing in my head, ah, that's a head note. But what's this note? Yeah. Is that a chest voice in my head voice? And what's this note? Yeah. That's low, but it certainly doesn't sound chesty. It sounds light and airy. So immediately the language for me breaks down. It doesn't give me the full access to understanding what's going on. And so I started to be, well, the language wasn't working for me. Not only that, I have since learnt that this language in many respects comes from, it is believed that this language came from a time when we anatomically thought that we had a sound-making mechanism in our chest and a sound-making mechanism in our head. And of course, we now know that's not the case, don't we? We now know that the mechanism for the sound being formed comes from your larynx. So we're going to just, for the moment, remove that. Now, I do occasionally, here on YouTube, use that language. And I use chest and head simply because I know from a terminology point of view that many of you still use that. But I do encourage you to start thinking about this new form of approaching it. I'll just get rid of this little message here. And so to start with, all we're going to do is create some semantics. So stick with me. We're just going to rename this lower. We're going to rename this upper. But we're going to actually add 2.5 other registers. So we're going to add this one down here. We're going to call this pulse. So pulse is the register that many people refer to as fry, where we go, ah. And what's happening there at a mechanical level, the vocal folds are pulsing. Yeah, they're not quite taut enough. They don't quite have enough activation that they're able to actually produce a clean tone. And so we refer to this as pulse. We're going to add another one here. Now for girls, ladies, we refer to this as flute. And guys, we refer to this as falsetto. And it is in part because mechanically the way the voice structures around this space here is different for guys and girls. We won't have time to really unpack that today, but nonetheless, this is the existing Thurman and Welch model. And for those of you who have watched my previous video where I've outlined this, this is all I've written in. And in fact, it was actually a young lady, a very young person, I think she was 15 or 14 or something, who actually brought my attention to the fact that actually something that I'd said in that previous video wasn't as accurate as it needed to be. And hopefully this video helps us clarify that, because there's actually another register on top. But I am going to do it like this. I'm going to make it only, and we're going to call it whistle. We'll just call it whistle. Because it is understood currently, and this could change because we learn so much about voice all the time, and everything that I'm talking about here today, I want to acknowledge to you that, you know, in 5 years' time, maybe I'll have time to actually delve deeper into the new model coming out of France, and I might find that that's even more helpful than what I work with currently. But nonetheless, it is currently understood that whistle register is for some people mechanistically not attainable. Some of us, and I'm going to put my hand up, I'm not able to do whistle register. It was once thought that only females could access, and only some females could access whistle register. In preparation for today's video, when I did further research and I found that, it was stated that only females could do it, I actually can't subscribe to that view of it because, in fact, I've got a number of male friends who are able to do it. Add to that, you can jump online, and in fact, I think I've actually put a link in the description section below that will take you to video of I think the guys, one of the guys from Pentatonics is doing a whistle register, well, what I would perceive to be whistle register. I'm happy to be corrected on that. And so certainly I'm not willing to actually genderize this. I think the chances are that it's really just a fact that only some voices can do it. And we'll come back to the reason why that is the case. Now, again, if all we were left with was that, then there's kind of, well, we've added some semantics, we've added a couple of extra things, we're acknowledging that there are different spaces within the voice, but it's not all that more helpful than just calling it chest and head, is it? We actually have to add some other things. And we're going to use some colours today. What we're going to do is we are going to add what are referred to as shorteners, or you might have heard the language TA, and I'm just going to call it 60/40. We'll come back to why I've done that in a moment. We're going to go 100 there, and we're going to come over here, and we are going to do this. Whoops, we don't want to do that. We want to do this. Now, I think there's more research to know. Is this lengthener dominant? Well, we'll come back to that. Lengthener. And we refer to this as CT. I'll explain what TA and CT mean in a second. And we're going to make, okay, and I'm going to write this. Now again, I've never taught it like this before, so you're seeing something unfold in front of your eyes. This is the first time I've ever expressed it like this, and I might find in months to come as I add this into my teaching model for this that this might change. And if it does, I'll come back to you and let you know in a future video. Let's talk about these two to start with. What are they? They actually refer to muscle groups. So your TA muscle, if I can get the video, is this muscle here. This is called your thyroarytenoid muscle. For a long time in the text, it was referred to as the vocalis muscle. It forms the body of your vocal fold. It's the big muscle that runs along here. That is what's called your shortener muscle. We refer to it as a shortener muscle because as a muscle, it is shortening the vocal folds. It does a few other things which we may get to today a little bit later. And then here what we've got is a CT muscle, the cricothyroid muscle, and it is your lengthener muscle. Now we actually have some other another lengthener, which is also your cricoarytenoid muscle at the back. And literally what they are doing, if I can set this up because I don't want to put this on my mic, they literally are lengthening and shortening the vocal folds. They are doing that in team with, as you can see, the cricothyroid tilt, again, which we're not overly going to talk about today. But that's actually, and that's where we get the language from, shortener and lengthener. So why have we written here 60, 40, 100, and etc.? That's because we also add to our language the word dominance. Now I know that there is some discussion online at the moment by certain individuals who suggest that using the term dominance is not useful. In fact, they cite, my understanding is that they've cited some, and this has all come through some comments that have been made on my channel. They have cited some, one piece of research to back themselves up. So that would suggest to us that there is a group of people who believe that what I'm about to say is not accurate. I want to put that straight out there. There is a body of work who would suggest, and I'm not going to sit here and roll out all the peer review articles for you. That's not useful for our time. But there is a body of work that supports what we're about to do. And this is the thing to always remember with research. You know, you can always find camps of people who will support one ideology or another. You know, many of us believe that climate change is a very real thing. 90-something% of scientists believe that there is. That tells us there is a small percentage of scientists who don't believe it. Who's right, who's wrong? I often go with the body of research, especially if it's finding itself being reinforced time and time again in a peer-reviewed process. That aside, let's talk about these lengtheners and shorteners. So here's how we use the language. When we're talking about a lower register note, what we used to call a chest voice, ya, now that's sitting in my lower register, isn't it? We refer to that as shortener dominant, because when the vocal folds are shortened, the fundamental frequency is lower, and so we get a lower and often a thicker fold position. Yeah. So we refer to that note, as a lower register shortener dominant note. If I go up, yeah, I'm now in my upper register, yes, but I'm now lengthener dominant. Not simply because my vocal folds have been lengthened to go higher, but also in the lengthening, I am creating a thinner vocal fold as well. And this is where Joe Estelle's language is not unhelpful. The Estelle model talks about thick fold and thin fold. And so it's good to actually be able to add that in as well. And so we have this lengthener. Now, if I sing that same note, ya, and sing it as ya, I'm still in my upper register, same note. But now the voice is what we refer to, according to the Thurman and Welch model of four registers, I am now shortener dominant. Yeah? Because the ratio of thick fold balance that we hear according to the TA musculature is giving me that bigger resonant sound. Now you'll notice, and of course equally, if I come down, ya, that's in my lower register, but that is now lengthener dominant. The vocal folds are not coming together in a thick, full-bodied way. Now, interestingly, that was a funny way of saying interestingly. Interestingly, the pulse register is 100% shortener dominant. For you to be able to do this, there can be no lengthener muscle activity in that whatsoever. And it is one of the reasons why it will often struggle to do that low pulse later in the day and into the night, because the muscle tone has formed in such a way that the lengtheners don't want to relinquish full control. The other way to think about this is that you've got basically these muscles are in a constant tug of war in a very similar way. I know, it's pretty pathetic. Look. Okay, so basically in the typical way is in the same way as your bicep works with your tricep. If I want to extend my arm, my tricep has to fully engage. If I want to bring my arm up, my bicep, not that you can see much here, my bicep has to fully activate and my tricep needs to disengage, yeah? It needs to passively release. But that's not to say that it's just let go. It's actually working with but against each other. It's in an antagonistic, agonistic relationship. That is what's happening with your voice. At some point, one is dominating over the other. So for you to go into flute, ladies, if you're wanting to go up into that really high uber point, or if you want to go into falsetto, guys, I have to actively look to set up my mechanism to be completely 100% lengthen muscles. Now, we talked about this half register up here. I call it half because we know that current knowledge understands that, my current knowledge understands that only a portion of the human race can get up here. Whistle register is an interesting register in the sense that it is formed by only the front half of the vocal folds oscillating. So in fact, what happens is the rear is not a full adduction of the vocal folds, and consequently, we get that real high whistle tone that we associate with Mariah Carey, Deborah Morgan. What I found really interesting in my recent reading on this subject, it was also highlighted, excuse me, my lunch is just wanting to revisit me. It's also highlighted that people with nodules can often access whistle register because of the way the nodules interrupt the oscillation of the vocal folds, causing only half of the vocal folds to access. So I hope you don't misinterpret that as me saying if you can't access whistle register mechanically but you still want to, you should get nodules. That would be the dumbest idea on the planet. Do not do that. But it could explain why Mariah Carey has been able to continue to access some of those notes in studio. I think she's probably accessing them more in studio than she is on live stage. It could give us an insight into why that's happening. Really fascinating. We're not going to talk any more about that. I've put together a whole pre-recorded video on whistle register, which I'll be recording this week to go live during the month of June. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll talk more about it then. So there you go. That's this 4.5/5 register model that is founded on the Thurman and Welch model. As I mentioned before, the other model that is currently big is M1, M2. I've actually also seen some people, put M4 and M3 and stuff around. I'm a little bit confused by that. I'll put it out there. Nonetheless, for me, from the outside, because I haven't researched it in depth, and feel free, for those of you who do understand this more, leave a comment in the notes sections below or the live chat, because I'm be keen to hear what you've got to say, or link me to someone that's talking about this in more depth. Link everyone to someone who's talking about it in more depth. M1 and M2 just seems to be purely semantics. But as I said, the reason I haven't felt a need to go after this newer version of conversing around this subject is because this has served me and my studio and my clients for 15 years. I really haven't felt a need to update my knowledge with the latest and the greatest, because I am a great believer, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Certainly chest and head, the language broke down for me, but this really opened up a whole range of things. Now, I do want to just add one more thing to our discussion. You'll notice that we've got these points here, and I'm going to put some numbers in here. I'm going to put this as 1, 2, 3, and what can I use? I think I can use this. 1, 2, 3. You can see what I was trying to do there. Now these are referred to as our registrational transitions. These are the points at which there is a gear shift. There is a mechanical requirement from an acoustical level as well as mechanical for the voice to need to shift. We're not going to get into transitions today as a part of, I'm pretty sure from memory, because I did it last week, the links in the notes sections below, in the description section, we'll link you to more videos about this. But the reason I've numbered it accordingly is because the primary transition point for females, the primary point of struggle for most females is in the moving from the lower to the upper register. We'll often hear it, want to naturally get in. Often I'll hear it around anywhere from sort of E4 through to G4. It'll happen anywhere there. That must be said also. That is also the point at which most males will want to transition. Then for females going into upper into flute, that's a secondary transition. We'll often hear sometimes a bit of a clunkiness there, but for most women, this is the primary spot. For guys, the opposite is true. For guys, the primary transition tends to be up into falsetto. And that's because for many men, this register, the upper register, is a relatively underdeveloped register. And so what'll often happen is a lot of guys will go straight from lower, shortened dominance, straight into falsetto, and you'll get this sort of clunk. And it's all because the voice, it's a little bit like being, driving a four gear manual car and always going from second to fourth and not ever using third gear. It's a bit like that, if that's helpful, a way to think about it. And so I often do a lot of work with male singers in learning to develop this, not because they need to transform their stylistic approach or anything like that. We've all got our individuality in the way we approach our singing. But it is because I want every singer, certainly that I have the privilege of teaching, to have the full access to the entirety of their voice. I don't want singers to not have one whole register available to them. I'm a great believer in we need to be one voice. Yes, there might be 4 registers, and if you're fortunate enough to have the fifth sitting up at the top, most certainly we want to be one voice and be able to move through that effectively. I really hope that is helpful. I'm going to come back over to the chat section now. We're going to get into some questions. I hope that has been helpful. If you have found that helpful, talking it through like that, please hit the thumbs up button. Hey, and for those of you who are here regularly, take the opportunity to share these videos on your social network, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, wherever you hang out socially. Let people know about this model, because it's not a widely known model, and yet it's just such a powerful insight into how the mechanics of the voice work. And I hope I've done it justice in my explanations as to how that works. Let me jump over to the notes section, the chat, and we'll have a bit of a talk. So let me go over to here. So there you go. I hope that's been helpful, and I hope you're enjoying the discussion amongst each other. I can see there's been a lot of lively goings on, so I'm just going to jump over here. And I did promise Gavin way back at the beginning, he's asked a simple question. I'm hoping to talk directly to registration specifically in a moment, but Gavin did ask one question at the very beginning, and I'm very happy to answer it for him because it's actually a relatively straightforward question. My low notes are really powerful when my voice is at rest, but when I practice, this is the question here, everyone, when I practice 30 minutes a day, my low notes suddenly become really airy and weak. Why is that? I lose my ease on the low notes too. And that is in part because, Gavin, what we just talked about, as your muscles tone throughout the day, you will find that your voice develops, it tones up, and so your lengthener muscles are becoming more activated, and therefore they are wanting to, be far more participatory. You will find, if you go looking on the channel, Gavin, you will find a video on there about day and night voice, and I think that will even further answer your question. And so I hope that's really helpful. Okay, so coming down here, and John Rick from the Philippines. So good to have you join us, John Rick. I hope it's been helpful. And we've got Misco from Montreal in Canada. Raining. Good to see you join in, Misco. Thanks for joining us. And Bree from Ontario, Canada. It must be just the right time for you guys. Oh no, it's midnight. That for me would not be the right time to be joining in on a live YouTube session, but I'm glad you could join us. Okay, so coming down here, so make sure you're leaving your questions. And I'm looking. I do apologise. I am a guy, so scanning is not my strength. Coming down here. Gavin saying that he can do whistle notes. That's awesome. Up to C7. Good for you, Gavin. I envy you in one respect. That's fabulous. Sandy's from upstate New York. That's awesome. Mitch Grassy from Pentatonics. Yeah, Gavin, that's who I am talking about, from Pentatonics, who can go right up the top there. Sandy, 77 years young and just starting voice lessons. That is awesome, Sandy. I encourage you. You know, we need more older singers. You bring so much wisdom and life experience to the stage, which in turn fuels your capacity to communicate with such breadth and richness. So that is awesome, Sandy. Good to see that you taking up this thing called singing. I'm still looking for, I've looked over at our time. We've been going for nearly 40 minutes, so I'm not going to stay here for long. Here we go. One from Bradley. What pitch would be this one here? What pitch would the upper register and falsetto voice happen in a dramatic tenor, held in tenor singing voice? What pitch would the upper register and falsetto voice? Well, it's always a difficult thing, Bradley, because, and you know, on my channel, I am always hesitant to put down exact textbook spots, because in my experience, which is 20 years of teaching experience, and there are people out there with far more experience than I, but certainly in my experience, I have found that often telling people exactly where that should happen is troublesome, because you not only does the voice, you know, we talk about it, the voice naturally wanting to transition between lower to upper register around about E4 to F4. E flat 4 to F4. Now, here's the deal though. At times we make decisions as the artist to withhold that transition, to cause the shortener dominance to continue and to maintain, to withhold that transition. So it can be confused, can create a lot of confusion around this subject. And so I'm hesitant, and you can hear my hesitancy already. I am hesitating at telling you exactly where that transition should happen. For me, not for you, for me, my experience is my transition as a true tenor, a very light tenor, my transition is going to want to happen around about A4. Now, for a dramatic tenor, I would dare say that is going to be experienced lower. But I encourage you to do some work with a person next to a keyboard and play around with it. Find out. But at the end of the day, this is not about where you should transition. This is around about equipping you the singer, with the capacity to make sure you are in control, that you have choice for voice. And that is such an important thing, that you're the person who's in control, not the voice in control of you. If the voice is in control of you, that is the tail wagging the dog. And it also means that it's unlikely that the narrative, the lyric, is going to come to the fore. It means that the voice is always going to hold you captive. And I don't want that to be the case for anyone here at Voice Essentials. I'm going to give one more question to somebody, And I'm going to give it to XP Nova because XP Nova is, well, 2:35 p.m. here. Well, that's pretty much what time it is here too. So you must be on the same timeline as me, XP Nova. You've been hanging out on the channel a little bit the last week, and so I'm going to give the last question to you. Can you get a sick or a sore throat with too much singing, or is it a cold? Usually happens to me after a long practice session. Okay, so if it's usually happening to you after a long practice session, it is not a cold. It is almost certainly that you have driven the voice too hard if the voice is sore. Now, it is important that you learn to distinguish between, and I'm just going to bring us over here because that is our last question for the day. It is important that you learn, XP Nova, to distinguish between fatigue and sore. There's a big difference because fatigue is something that naturally happens after every voice use. If you run a marathon, you will get to the end, if you can make it to the end, and your voice, your legs will be tired. Muscles fatigue with use. If, however, you are sore at the end of a singing workout, well, that's a different kettle of fish. And you need to learn to distinguish between the two. If it's fatigue, then you've probably got, more moments to be able to vocalize on. But it's during the fatigue phase that you do need to consider, okay, I'm getting to the end of my warm-up, or my vocal workout. But the moment you hit that sore point, you have almost certainly gone too far. You have not pulled up stumps. Sorry, that was an Australian vernacular. That's the UK contingent will understand that one. Pulling up stumps is a cricket term. You have not finished early enough, and so learn to distinguish between the two. So important. Never get to the end of a workout and be sore. If you are doing something incorrectly. And look, to a certain extent, YouTube can help you, XP Nova, but at some point, all of us need to find ourselves in the studio with a qualified singing teacher who can diagnose, identify, and correct. I can't do that for you here on YouTube. No one can do that here for you on YouTube. Certainly the technology doesn't allow us to do that yet. Certainly can do it via online lessons, but it's sometimes you just reach that ceiling of what YouTube can do for you, and then you do have to invest in that one-on-one private tuition. So XP Nova, I hope that is helpful to you. Wow, that was a long session. We've gone 46 minutes, 40 and a bit. So I really hope that today's session has been one that has been super helpful to you. For those of you who have never participated in one of these before with me, thank you for joining in. I hope it's been helpful. I hope you'll hit the thumbs up button just to let me know that it has the information has proven helpful. And if this is the first time you've ever been on the channel, please subscribe. Join our ever-growing family of singers from across the globe who just want to sing. Here at Voice Essentials, everybody sings. We are not an elitist group. We are an encouraging group, and that's the culture that we are forming together. And so we would love for you to join us. Until I see you in the next Voice Essentials video, I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.